Okay, this is about trust. So in talking about trust, we're going to start with something that may seem a little strange. We're going to start by talking about a mathematical formula. In this case, it's a formula devised by a very famous man by the name of Buckminster Fuller. Fuller was a really interesting guy who I think he died in the 80s. He was born before the turn of the last century. He was an architect, kind of a maverick architect, engineer, philosopher. Did a lot of works on the fundamental building blocks of nature, structure in nature. And out of this, he invented something very famous, the geodesic dome. And you'll, as you go around, if you know anything about Fuller, you find buildings that have incorporated a lot of his ideas. He jumped from architecture to philosophy and the sciences. He wrote a wonderful book called An Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth, which was one of the things that inspired Earth Day, and a lot of the people who are environmental activists have studied and learned a lot from Bucky Fuller. You're going to see, here's a picture of Fuller with holding first a model of a geodesic dome and then actually one that's in the background fully completed. So Fuller began by recognizing the fundamental building block, which is called a tetrahedron. Tetra for four, hedron for faces. So this is a three-dimensional object. And all the things that we're talking about are called polyhedrons, which means many faces. So the smallest and simplest polyhedron is the tetrahedron. And you see a picture of it, and you look at this picture, it's flat, but imagine it as a three-dimensional object. It has the smallest number of points that it can enclose space. It has 4 points, 6 connectors, lines connecting it. It's found in nature, and it's quite strong. When you look at bridges, you notice that they're all triangular. So these are definitely part of that structure in nature. So let's talk about theories and formulas. A theory is what you think might happen if you do something. A formula predicts what actually happens when you take a particular action. So Fuller, in working with all these polyhedrons, developed a formula to predict the number of connecting lines in any polyhedron if you started with the number of points. So you're now looking at the first one of these. The formula, and just stay with me on this, it's the number of points, which in this case is 6, minus our number of points squared. So n squared is 36, 6 times 6. Subtract 6, get 30, divided by 2, and that will give you the number of connecting lines. And so if we do this, which you're going to see on the screen, we discover that Fuller had it right. 36 minus 6 divided by 2 is 15. And voila, we have 15 connecting lines for our polyhedron. Which again, you got to imagine, even though it's flat, if you pull it out, you would have a structure. So, can you be confident of this formula? Well, you've only done it once. So you can't really trust it to work every time in every situation. So let's do it again. So this time we do the same formula, of course, but we just use 5 points. And so 5 squared is 25 minus 5. Divided by 2 equals 10. And once again, Fuller got it right. We have 10 connecting lines, connecting all these points. And then we also see points where the lines cross. And those Fuller called integrities. And these are actually the thing that makes the structure strong, is where these lines intersect. Even if they aren't intersecting because they're in space, even though they may not be on top of each other like they would be in a polyhedron, something that's flat, if they're crossing in space, still it strengthens that structure significantly. Okay, so let's talk about generalizing. Generalizing is very, very important because it means we extrapolate from an experience that we've had to other experiences that we are going to have. Okay? How does a kid learn about gravity? If you've ever watched a small child sitting in a high chair and they throw the bowl down on the floor and the parent in exasperation picks the bowl up, puts it back, kid throws the bowl down again, and this can go on for quite a while, at which point most parents are beginning to tear their hair out. What is the kid doing? He's conducting an experiment. Does the bowl always go down? Now for us, we're saying, of course, the bowl goes down, gravity, and so the child doesn't have language yet. The child is learning, repeating an experiment over and over and over again until it becomes a formula. The first time he throws the bowl down, it's a theory. Well, I wonder what will happen when I do this. Then he repeats it a number of times, and then after a while, he stops doing that. Doesn't throw the bowl down anymore because he doesn't need to know that anymore. He's gotten to the point, okay. And that also means if I throw the spoon, it's going to go down too. So we begin to generalize from the experience we have. So once it's proven, you trust it, you act on it. You don't have to throw the bowl down, in your 30s to discover whether it goes down. You got that pretty well down. So you don't have to do it 1,000 times. You generalize from that experience. And then you kind of close your mind for that particular experiment and you act on that. And that's wonderfully valuable. That's how we learn, really, is generalizing from our experiences. Then we integrate. We take the formula that we've discovered and we integrate it. So if you know the formula works, then you begin to integrate it into your life. Example, if being honest really works once and twice, 3 times, why not just do it all the time? Okay, that would be generalizing from that experience. So what do we know? Okay, enough of the mathematical stuff. I'm trying to make a point about how we get to confidence and trust, really. Therapeutic community has been rigorously evaluated and subjected to intensive research for 50 years. So the evidence is overwhelming. I mean, there are books, manuscripts, many, many research publications, all of which pretty much come to the conclusion that a teaching and therapeutic community reduces substance abuse and other illicit behaviors. It reduces criminality. It improves stability in people's jobs and their relationships. Generally, I mean, there's even studies that show it improves their intelligence, reduces prejudice, makes people happier, okay? If you had an elixir that did all these things, you'd want to buy it by the gallon. So there is essentially a formula, okay? Now, this is a formula, you're lucky in this case, you don't have to discover it. It's been discovered for you. George DeLeon, many, many others around the planet have described the basics of the formula of the teaching and therapeutic community. Here's a few of them. The length of stay. Every study that's been done shows that the longer people stay in a teaching and therapeutic community, the better they do, for the rest of their lives, okay? And that anything less than 90 days is really kind of a waste of time, because that 90 days is the threshold of change. You can't really expect anything to really happen because it takes a while. We don't get into a bad situation for 20 years of our lives and then change it in 28 days. It just doesn't happen. It takes some time. So you got to give it the time. You know, a year, 6 months, a year is a much more reasonable length of time to maximize the benefits of being in community. Another one, when people leave, you can't, somebody said recovery is not an episode, it's a lifestyle. So if you have changed your life significantly when you are in community, which you should, when you get out of community, you need to persist in those new behaviors. You need to have positive, supportive relationships and engage in pro-social activities that will keep you on that path, that direction that you started while you were in the therapeutic community. Other things, engagement is absolutely critical. When you go into a clinic, you're kind of passive. Somebody gives you a prescription, either a pill or some behavior that you're supposed to engage in that's going to help you deal with your problem. When you come into a teaching and therapeutic community, you're expected to be a teacher and a learner. You're expected to be actively engaged in the process every day. And there's an old Latin phrase, tuum est, it's up to you. We can provide the setting, we can provide the resources, but we cannot provide your internal motivation and your passion for getting your life better. That's got to come from you. Helping other people is also really critical. This is not a you number, this is a we number. We're doing this together. So participation in the community as method is critical. So the more that you participate in community, the more you help and care about other people, the more you develop your own empathy, the better you are going to be post-community. And honesty is absolutely critical. The idea that you can change significantly in your life without being honest is a shibboleth. Honesty is absolutely the entrance criteria. Now, we don't expect people to be completely honest the day they step into community. That's a process that develops over time and takes trust and takes effort on people's part and also being able to have a sense that the community is safe, but it is really, really important. Trust is really the bridge out of yourself. The work has been done for you, a half a century of creating the formula for you. But you have to trust the formula. You can't second guess it. No, maybe it won't work for me, even though it's worked for people all over the planet for 50 years, and you begin to start, well, it won't work for me. Well, yeah, trust the formula, or you get stuck and staying in the same position, unable to move, unable to change. Here's another formula, the golden rule. The golden rule is the simplest categorical imperative that exists. It's one that's central to all the world's major religions. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. Real simple. It's a formula. It's a formula. If we try and diagram the golden rule, what do we get? We get a tetrahedron. Do, others, done, you, and the lines cross, so it's an integrity. Okay? So, and we could do the formula there, but we don't have to because we've done it before. We know it works. So sometimes we learn by trial and error, particularly in an unknown situation. But when you have to. I don't know what to do. There's no guidance. I'll just have to try this and see if it works. But when your life is at stake, it's better to learn from the trials and errors of other people. Because if you make the error, it may cost you your life, or it may cost you your very, very significant errors in your life that you don't really need to experience. So we benefit from the accumulated knowledge of other people who have done the trials and errors. So in terms of the teaching and therapy community, we've got 50 years of an accumulation of trials and errors and the benefits of experience from people all over the world. So trust the community, trust the formula, use the formula, and change your life.